When I was 18 years old, I made the biggest mistake of my life and converted to Islam. Hi guys, it's Joseph Colden, and I wanted to make this video because after the interview with Anne-Marie Waters, a few questions came up, were given to me in the comments, and I thought I need to make this video quite clear of where I've been and where I am now. So I went to university. I grew up in the Lake District and never knew any Muslims as a child. Grew up in an evangelical Christian home. I went to church with my family. We were in part of the youth group. My dad and mum were in the worship team at church. You know, it was kind of an idyllic childhood. But when I got to 18 and wanted to go to university, because where I grew up is very small, I went to Preston University, University of Central Lancashire, and you kind of get open to new ideas, and it's the time of experimentation. So I was put into dorms, in mixed dorms, and one of my dorm mates was a Muslim. So we used to, it was in Ramadan, and they were fasting and praying, and I was kind of fascinated about the way that they pray. You know, just the bowing and the kind of reading and the language that I'd never heard. And I used to kind of join them for breaking the fast, even though I'd not fasted and I'd probably been out getting drunk and what have you. They used to still say, come in. It's where you're given the first kind of cushioning of the convert lie. So, you know, I left university and kind of had a bit of an understanding that Muhammad came after Jesus, and you know, I didn't fully understand it, but I went to work in the hospital and I got a job in the CSSD unit, which is tools and instruments for the hospital. They provide all the tools and instruments for the surgeries that go on. One of the surgeons there was a chap called Dr. Mian, and we used to talk very regularly. One of the subjects that we used to love to talk about was religion, and it's where the convert lie was then reinforced. So he was giving me verses in the Bible, and it's pretty much the Zach Ignite argument, you know, Deuteronomy 18:18, all these great things about Muhammad split the moon and he did this, and you know, I can get into these in more detail, but I think everyone who's watching this should know the kind of Zach Ignite arguments and the convert lie. And I fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. I started going to the meeting hall and started to learn the Shahada, and eventually I said the Shahada and became a Muslim. My parents were outraged that I had converted to such a misogynistic religion, but that's partly one of the reasons why I did. I probably wasn't the fully right reason. I had many other reasons, but that was one of them, is this notion that if a wife displeases you, you can divorce her and marry another one. In fact, you can marry 4 wives. And the guys in the group used to boast about this. Some of them used to say, yeah, I've got 2 wives. You know, I've got 1 wife here and 1 wife there. And, you know, they used to boast about it. And I thought, well, that seems pretty good. But now I've learned, you know, 2 wives, double the problems. So I'm going to get to, it's a long story, but I'm going to kind of cut through it. I ended up moving to Peterborough because I had met a Muslim girl and thought the grass was greener, the Lake District is boring, there's nothing goes on there, and moved. So I ended up in Peterborough and was fully practicing my faith by this point, learning the Hadith, learning the Sunnah, and really, you know, going deep into it. Then I moved to Leicester and carried on going into my faith, and it's where I got in touch with a group called Tabligh Jumat. Tabligh Jumat are kind of the evangelists of the Muslim community. They go door to door, knocking on doors, and you know, want to get Muslims back into the mosque. It's like the Jehovah's Witnesses of the Muslims. So I got into this group and they were saying, you need to read Sahih Bukhari, you need to read Sahih Muslim. So I bought the entire collection. I bought all the books, every single book that I could lay my hands on I bought. it's interesting because I've later been told that I shouldn't have really had these books because I wasn't a scholar. But then when I went to the scholars and showed them certain things, they said you should learn to be a scholar. I'll get into that in more detail later. I kind of went on with this this notion of Islam for a long time, nearly 10 years. I eventually met a girl who's now my wife, and moved to Birmingham. And in Birmingham, some really quite dark times were ahead. I eventually fell onto David Wood's material, and I had all these books that he was referring to. So it was certain things that he would point out, and he would give a reference in the days when he was doing ABN SAT with Sam Shimon and Pastor Joseph. So he was giving references, and he knew his stuff. He really knew his stuff. So I was writing this down and constantly writing everything he said and then researching it, and I was like, whoa, this is really in here about the stuff of the sheep verses, and it's the satanic verses, things in the Quran, things in the Hadith. I really thought this is some compelling argument here. So I would go to the Muslim community in the mosque and say, I've learned this. I wouldn't tell them where, but I'd say I've learned this, and what does this mean? And they had no answers. They had no answers at all. At all. They were telling me to stop. They were like, do you need to stop? You need to just practice, and you just need to do this, and you should stop looking at all that stuff. In fact, give us the books that you've bought, give us them back. I wasn't giving them books back. I knew that these books, I've been given these books for a reason, and I've kept on to them to this very day. During my time in Birmingham, while I was with my wife, she got onto my notes, and she was reading all these notes, and she started on her own journey. She actually started to pick up Sahih Bukhari and look at the things that I was writing down. So it would have something like Quran verse, and then the section about it underneath and what it really means, and then say the commentary and things like that. She started to research it, and one day I think we had this conversation of, was Muhammad really just a fake prophet? Was he a fake prophet? And we both agreed that he was. So where does that leave us? Both of us now have come to the same understanding. At this time, I started to not pray like a Muslim. I actually went back to praying as a Christian and opening my arms and heart up to God, spending times in prayer, reading the Bible, and God really spoke to me. In these times, my mental health was quite bad, and I was really suffering because I was lonely in Birmingham. And something quite amazing happened. Nina, my wife, started on her journey to becoming a Christian as well. Later that summer, she was baptized in a Pentecostal church in Birmingham, and it's a day that I'll always remember and cherish. The day that me and another pastor baptized my wife. But the family had stepped in by this point, and they wanted her to split up with me, and it was really quite a hard time. So I ended up in Birmingham homeless services, and I've got some pictures for you guys. In the Birmingham homeless services, I was subject to just absolute acts of violence, chemical jihad, and at the same time I was full of zeal, wanting to speak out against Islam. I got into a lot of trouble and ended up almost being the death of me. There was drug dealers that were coming into the hostel supplying hardcore crack cocaine and heroin to people in the hostel. One of these people, one of the nights, this is just one typical night, ended up having his face slashed open and beat to a pulp because he owed money for drugs. It probably that he was saying to these people that I used to be a Muslim, and how I'd left Islam, and it really cost me my life. One night I saw someone I was upstairs, and I came down the stairs and saw someone trying to break into my room. So I went in after them. That's when I was stabbed through the arm, which was stabbed here through the arm, and shot in the leg. And I nearly bled out. I think it was like 3 minutes I bled out. It was horrendous. I just remember having this feeling like I was on a sinking ship, and it was getting darker and darker. It was such a surreal experience. And a policeman coming in and belting my leg up and finding things to tie round and stuff like that. But I was passing out by this point, and eventually did pass out. Woke up in hospital, and was in intensive care for quite a few weeks. But I still had nowhere to kind of live, so I ended up moving into another hostel from the hospital, and from that hospital the people found out where I lived, and decided to run me over. So one day I was walking out with my dog, and my dog broke loose of the lead. She must have been pulling so hard because a transit van was revving so fast that it was screaming down the street. It hit me, and I ended up like this. So this was Christmas. So as you can see, I've got a Christmas hat. I broke my neck. My entire face was broken. My eye socket and nose. My femur, ribs. This is me on one of the better days with loads of fucking painkillers down my neck. But I was still recovering from the gunshot and stab wound. So if you think that speaking out against Islam won't cost you your life, think again. It will, and you want to be not scared of these people at all. But always watch your back. Always watch your back, because I'm very, very cautious now of where I go, who I speak to, and what I say, and what have you, because it can end up like this, which is quite unfortunate. But it's kind of why I wanted to make this video of where does it leave me, because me and my wife were both now together. We got back together, and we both are Christian. We left the religion of Islam, and we both are church going Christian. We now have a 2-month-old son, and things are looking up. We're moving from Birmingham. We're moving back to the Lake District to start a new life. But as far as politics goes, we're on the right. We can't be ethno-nationalist because, we're a dual heritage family. But at the same time, we're on the right because Islamophobia and all these lefty terms that are thrown around, if it's costing you your life and you end up like this, then yeah, I'm quite sure that that's something I'd be afraid of. Very afraid. Because violence is always the answer to these people. There's never a peaceful dialogue. It's violence. Because if you insult Muhammad and you call out the things in the hadith, and when David Wood makes a video and puts all the little notations up and what have you, I check them out. I know that they're real because I own the books that they're in. And I carried these books around every hospital, every place I went to, I carried these books. They were trying to steal these books back off me, and I kept on to them. I just want to re-emphasize that free speech is a God-given right. It's a God-given right. And I don't want other people to go through this for free speech. That's why it takes all of us speaking out about it, because if we don't, there'll be more of this stuff, and that's just going to be a sad environment. I've got a lot more material that I would love to get into, but I'm making this video probably for a single person, more than anything, and also to promote the fact that there is a party that accepts ex-Muslims on the right. That's for Britain, and I would request that you join to defend your liberty and freedom of speech, and for these type things not to happen. We're a family, and we are going to remain Christians. In the Bible it says you will be persecuted for your faith, you'll be thrown in prison, you will be killed for your faith. You see, we don't go and kill other people because of our faith, but we are willing to lay down our lives for others to make sure that, you know, their life is saved. There's loads of material. I'm not really prepared properly for this, but I wanted to make this video, so thank you for watching and listening to this story, and I hope you subscribe, and you know, maybe more people will come to understand what the religion teaches in Islam and why nobody should convert to Islam.